Thank you, brother.
Is it me?
Cana,
Yes.
great to see you. Thank you. Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you. Could you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So at the outset, thank you very much. I dearly call you Vasanta for the words of introduction, and I deeply appreciate the good things that you said. I'm glad you didn't say many bad things about me, although you know about them. But it's good. We limited to these good ones. But I want to thank Hepzibah Das for inviting me to do this homily, and also to Augustus Azaria for hosting this worship for us. And my special thanks to Dr. Vinod Vincent, our own presbyter, St. Mark's, and all those connected to this wonderful meeting. Bishop John Shelby Spong is one of my favorite authors. And he speaks of three kinds of people generally in the church. He says, those who feel so close to God, one group, who think they are strictly following the Bible, biblical principles, they determine very close to angels and keep them separated from the rest. They feel like angels most of the time. And he says and calls them angelism. And there is another group who think they are absolutely human and they behave like human, and I want to be human most of the time. And with a very few contacts to the church and the festival visitors. And they are 100% human and say we live only once and we do what we want. He calls them humanism. And there is a third group in the church who try to imitate a model, dependency on God, who believe they constantly need God, church, and faith. But they stand with Bible in one hand and newspaper in the other hand. He calls them Christian realism. Now, Jesus in the mission and the ministry, as part of his building his kingdom and the reign which he preached, he was so anthrocentric, human-centered, with a very clear preferential option for the poor and marginalized. The changing of water into wine narrative in the book of John, the Gospel of John, has a special connotation, introducing Jesus as the first sign of public ministry. And he introduces him as the Son of God, the Messiah. Let's look into the context of the narrative. Cana, the town, is today understood to be the place named Gaffa Cana. Gaffa means town, and it is Gaffa Cana is the town of Cana, just like the way they call Gaffa Nahum, which is the Capernaum. Gaffa Cana is closer to Nazareth, almost few miles away, where it is the hometown of Mary. It appears that the wedding was a family marriage where Mary was actively in the inner circle, where Jesus and the disciples were also invited to the wedding. Now, in our mind, we need to travel to Gaffa Cana in order to understand the settings. This is again a strong Jewish tradition of a marriage celebration. A wedding is a public affair where the whole community is invited and sometimes celebrated for 7 days. In the Jewish wedding, the finale is when the bridegroom will get up, take a wine glass in his hand, and he will break it. When he breaks it, symbolically expressing that the marriage ceremony is over. But in this context, The bridegroom couldn't break it because there is shortage of wine. Many people look at this miracle from different perspective. But I want to affirm two things. One, this is not about alcohol. More interestingly, many think that this narrative has a God's permission for alcohol. No. And the second is, many say Jesus was disrespectful to Mary and he was rude. That is also not true. The Gospel of John focuses on the transforming power of Jesus, the liberating power of Jesus, the God who offers abundance. I want to share with you 3 words that might help us to go through the narrative of the first miracle in Cana. 1, a marriage. 2, a miracle. 3, a message. Permit me to explain what I just wanted to say that with you. It is here John the Gospel, the writer, projects the distinctive way to introduce the Messiah, the Jesus. Only in his Gospel we find the number 7 in many instances. 7 titles and attributes of God. 7 signs of miracles. 7 exchanges of conversation with this Samaritan woman. 7 I ams, etc. Hence, this gospel is also known as heptatic gospel because of 7, where John brings the meaning of abundance. Mary, the mother, comes to Jesus because she knows they are running short of wine. Jesus loved his mom so much that the Bible records Jesus was always concerned about his mom. Jesus actually broke a patriarchal legacy that was followed in the Old Testament times onwards. For example, they will say, the history says, Isaac, son of Abraham, and then Solomon, son of David, and so on. But in the story of Jesus, the gospel records Jesus, son of Mary. This becomes very obvious that Jesus focused on women who were looked down at the time. So Jesus comes strongly as a transformer, liberator, and a kingdom builder to recognize the unrecognized and to mark significant those who were insignificant. Mary goes to Jesus. Please do something. Interestingly, she doesn't seem to have even been impacted with the response of Jesus. She quickly turned to the laborers or the workers or the servants and told them, just do what he says. And she moved on. When I read that, I love Mary. Such a cool character who knows her son so much because she kept all the things that was prophesied in his heart, cherished and rejoiced. She would have said, I know who you are, my son. I know what you can do. And she demonstrated a great trust and faith in him in times of crisis. In these moments with COVID-19, could we ask ourselves, what is our anchor at this stressful time? Whom we think would we trust and hold on to? But on the other hand, Jesus would have smiled. Of course, he did answer, women, but then he knows that it is his mom. My mom knows me, who I am, so well. And because of that, he even honored her in this crisis. Both Jesus and Mary had the opportunity to express trust in each other within the family bonding. This narrative is asking us to check on children, parents, children relationship and the trust we have in each other. With this, within the family, to what extent do we trust each other? To what extent we respect? What extent we honor? Because this became the foundation, one of the foundations of this miracle. Wedding is an event on the whole town. When the wedding is over, we don't speak much about the good things, the good food, good decor, good concepts drawn, event management. Yes, for some time we speak, but the family might speak a longer. But for the rest of our lives, we would say, what went wrong in the wedding? The bride came late. I put myself in my wedding and say, in Solomon's wedding, the food was short. They did not calculate the guest. Very, very sad. When someone is getting married, we even go to them and warn them, be careful in good planning. Don't do like Solomon's wedding. The food was short. They pass this news from generation to generation. This is community gossip and also church gossip. We pass this information in prayers. On the name of prayer, we also pass this bad news to the people. And to even unknown people who don't know who Solomon is, would talk to them on phone, the chats and WhatsApp, Facebook and social media. We know many like this. So Mary came running to Jesus, knowing all this would happen, would embarrass the family and will dishonor the family. 2. A miracle. There are many themes running in these narratives. Pictures within the pictures. Story within the story. And narratives in parts. For example, why on the third day? Why stone judges and why should be 6? Where are they placed? And how are they used? And who are these laborers and servants? The roles so many people involved in the wedding played. The metaphor of the wedding itself. This will take a whole day seminar for us. But I want to bring 3 reasons for this miracle. 3 things happened. The first one, Jesus' response to Mary, verse 4 says, "Women, why do you involve me? My hour has not yet come." Not yet come is the punchline. Looks like a social distancing between Jesus and Mary, mom and son. For my time has not come. Don't push me beyond this. Jesus spoke like a son of man. This is as per John. I need to wait for my time. We might ask Jesus, what time, which time, and how long do we need to wait? The Bible records 1,000 years are like an evening gone and are like one day. But quickly, Jesus moves into action. There are many reasons people say, but a theological scholar said, Jesus said this not about the Son of God saying, my time has not come, but he was actually talking about the time. Probably Jesus would have asked, what is your time? They would have said 3:30. Jesus would have said, okay, let me wait till 5 o'clock. So it was this expression this scholar brings out for the simple reason, at 5 o'clock, the laborers, men and women working in the vineyard, in the fields, and in all the domestic work which they will do, they will finish the work and they will come to join the wedding banquet. So Jesus waited for the time the poor, the marginalized, those who are discriminated, kept outside, also wanted to come into the banquet of the wedding. So Jesus waited at the time. That's what he says. And the moment they came, they walked in and they washed themselves, cleansed and purified themselves in the ritualistic cleansing from the 6 jars kept outside the banquet hall. As you enter, you have to do that first. By this act, Jesus taught the disciples and the church the wedding is inclusive. To make it truly a celebration, both the rich and the poor, men and women, Jews and the Gentiles, all of them need to be part because God is not biased. And this is the reason He said, my time has not come. The second has got to do with the first one. The next action would justify his response on time to his mother. His eyes quickly fell on the 6 jars kept outside the marriage hall for the purpose of purification, a ritual mandatory in a Jewish culture. No wonder, due to hand washing, cleansing, the COVID-19 has not much affected this area. Because by practice, they indulge in cleansing even before coming into their own homes. The jars kept outside were dirty. They were filthy, murky. Water spilt everywhere. The dust from the sandals, the mud, and all that walking up and down, all around, it was even unhygienic. But cleansing is a must before you enter into any public or even your own home. These jars had specific roles, which are dirty, bad water, kept outside. Now Jesus brings these jars into the center of the celebration. There is no reference in the Bible that the jars came from outside to inside. But in concept, Jesus brought these jars, which are meant to be kept outside, pushed aside by the community. You need to stand there day and night, and that is your place. Jesus brings them into the center of the celebration. How true this is in the context of India. Those Dalits, those women, those children, those orphans, and those caste people who are kept outside the community and the church, Jesus wants them to come into the middle of the celebration of the banquet. And all those discriminated, whether it is Dalits in India, whether it is Burakumin in Japan, whether it is Sinti and Roma in Germany, and also Adugu in Philippines, and Daku community in Bangkok, these discriminated, Jesus would turn to them, bring them into the celebration of the wedding. And the third reason of the miracle. The third thing that happened is also about the servants. I love these servants. They did what was told to them. Fill in the jars with water, Jesus said. But they filled it up to the brim. It was an astonishing faith. They didn't even ask, is that the jar you want me to fill up? No, they found that this man is the Messiah. I will obey him. The moment he said fill in, they went and filled it up to the brim. Jesus demonstrated to the disciples, those who obey and follow him will be a living miracle. Of course, the miracle happened. Jesus did the miracle. But where did the miracle happen is a very interesting thing to look at. When Jesus said, take this water to the banquet manager for qualifying this wine, they took the water and went to the banquet manager. Between the journey from the jar to the banquet manager, this miracle happened. It happened in the hands of the servants, in the hands of the laborers. How true this is. Jesus reminds us even through these actions, we are the hands of God. We are the heart of God. We are the mind of God. So God becomes manifested through us in everything that we do. We become a living miracles ourselves. How true this is. Even today, helping and supporting of the standard migrants, laborers and families during COVID-19 to supply needed nourishment is not a charity, my friends. It is a demand and a spiritual engagement to the believing community. Finally, a message. The banquet master in verse 9 said, tasted the wine and not knowing where it came from, because only the servants, the Bible records this beautifully, only the servants who drew water knew where it came from. Everyone brings the choicest wine first and later the cheaper one, but you saved the best till now. Here, Jesus comes as a God who gives second chances. We see Jesus always making the first move. In the story of Zacchaeus, in the story of the Samaritan woman, the locked up disciples in the upper room, and now in Cana, Jesus tells the servants, fill up the jars. Are we like Jesus in Cana, making the first move? We often say, I'm not at fault. I didn't make the mistake. Very judgmental, logistics, and pride-filled. But Jesus demonstrates that we are kingdom people who will need to make the first move for a miracle of peace and reconciliation in all places that we are engaged with. This wine becomes a symbolic, spiritual gesture of Jesus. The physical cleansing by water, but the spiritual cleansing by the blood, the wine that is transformed to be his blood, leading to the Eucharist in our lives and worship. Jesus portrays, through the miracle at the wedding in Cana, that it symbolizes the banquet and the kingdom. The union of Jesus, the bridegroom, with the bride church, the bride. As we see this in Revelation chapter 19, we are invited to the wedding of the Lamb and marriage supper of Jesus the groom. Consummation of this wedding is the miracle. Jesus invites us through this miracle that we need to remain in the center of the wedding celebration. In whichever place that we are kept, we become salt and light in the community, in the church, in our neighborhood, in our business place that we are placed. We are the living miracle. The church is called to be conscious of the difference in the community, the social strata. And the church is called to be a miracle maker. And in particular, to bring in new energies to the church. To be a church which is an ecclesia. To be a Dalit-friendly church. To be a poor-friendly church. To be a widow-friendly church. To be an orphan-friendly church. To be a women-friendly church, child-friendly church, migrant-friendly church. Just the way Jesus did. As Jesus said, the servants filled up the jar up to the brim. And Jesus affirms in John 10:10, I have come to give life and life in abundance for all. We are the church, called to be inclusive and offer miracle of abundance. up to the brim. A marriage, a miracle, and a message. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Solomon Benjamin. So, as